Right, Metropole TVKE across all your social media platforms, 2146. That is your SMS line. My name is Simba, Elijah Charles Kiage. Thank you very much for joining us this morning on our economic review. Good. Let's talk about pulling the youth in. All right, now, pretty much. All right, thank you very much for joining us this morning on our economic review. Now, we have, we're going to look at the three stories that we have for you this morning. Let me just refer to my data because it looks as if... Good. All right, now, a story carried by the Business Daily indicates that supermarkets and independent bakers might soon disagree on the price of bread after supermarkets kept the cost of in-house baked bread at 50 shillings, which might soon force independent bakers to reverse to the recent 5 shillings increase in the price of their loaves after value-added tax reverted to 16%. Now, 400 grams of bread now retails at 55 shillings, while supermarkets maintained the cost of in-house baked bread at 50 shillings, which will see customers opt for cheaper bread. Now, with most supermarkets in Nairobi baking bread, which they sell alongside the loaves from other bakers, there is fear that sales of bakers' bread might dwindle in the wake of the revised taxes in the country. Now, a ton of wheat has increased by 30% to 33,000 shillings from 25,300, sparking a rally both on bakers and standard flour. The price is expected to rise further after Russia, which supplies the bulk of wheat to Kenya, introduced a new tax on exports. Now, wheat millers want the government to abolish the 10% duty on wheat and return it to the zero-rated VAT status to cushion consumers against the rising cost of international prices. Good. To help us this morning to go through this conversation, we are joined by Gabriel Mwendwa, who is an investment associate at Horizon Africa Capital, and Odhiambo Ramogi-CEO, Elim Capital. Before we jump to them, let's look at the data that we have for you this morning that supports the raw material that goes into the loaves of bread. And we're going to start from the prices of that has been paid to farmers of wheat into the country. That is exactly where we are. It has been rising all the way from 2017 to 2019. Again, if you look at the imported quantity of wheat into the country, 2018 is going to be the only year from that data that is going to be showing next as the only time that we had price sort of an import deficit in the country. But you can see the general trend again is that they have been on a rising trend from 2017 to where we are right now in terms of produced quantity. Again, in the country, you're going to say we've been also on a rising trend. Good. Odhiambo Ramogi, let me take this time to say Happy New Year. Is it okay?
Happy New Year, Simba.
Can you get me, sir?
Yes, I can get you.
Good. All right, let's jump into it then. I mean, VAT is now back to 16%, and we've seen most of the commodities readjusted. And when it comes to Kenya, we normally look at it from two perspectives. We look at it from breakfast, and then we look at it as lunch as well. It's the unga economy into the country. Supermarkets are selling it at 50. Independent bakers have readjusted their prices. They're selling at 55. Should we be talking about this, or we let that play out among them?
No, it's an interesting conversation to have about the market. I mean, this is an economic review show, so and these are economic movements, so it is expected that it forms part of the agenda.
Yes.
There are, yes. Factors that affect pricing of any product are, number one, of course, costing. Number two is market pressure. Number three, government policy. You'd expect also the demand in terms of the number of people available to buy and their willingness or desire to buy the good or the product. It would seem like for bread, many of these factors have congregated together to push its price upwards, because number one, the market has colluded to raise the price. with the bakers, the independent bakers deciding that they are going to push the price upwards. Are they going to do so? They already have, but the supermarkets who perhaps see bread as a complementary product. It's not the mainstay of their business. It's not what pays their rent. It's not what pays their wages. They can afford to absorb the few shillings in terms of losses. And so they have not pushed the prices upwards. And so that brings the market in balance. But there's also the issue of government policy. The government has pushed VAT upwards. That is going to play out in terms of their costings. The cost of wheat has gone up because Russia has decided to tax their wheat.
Yes.
That is also playing out for the bakers. And so it's a conglomeration of many factors that is affecting the price of bread to go upwards. And it's an interesting observation to make moving forward.
Yes. All right, Gabriel, let me bring you in on that as well. I mean, would it be unfair for the supermarkets to find their way to sell this commodity at 50 shillings, going by what is surrounding the raw material wheat in the country?
So just adding on what my colleague has said, there are very many factors that are affecting these very prices.
Yes.
And I think the issue we are trying to look at, or what you're trying to raise, is whether there is anti-competition, because supermarkets are the biggest selling avenues for this bread.
Yes.
So is it unfair that they're selling their own product at lower prices compared to what some of their suppliers are doing? But I think the answer is no. If anything, remember what happened the last time. Instead of increasing prices of bread, what the bakers actually decided to do was reduce the quantity of the bread.
Yes.
Yet, if you go to a shop, you will find that some people still actually package it in the 500-gram capacity, and they sell it for the same price at 50. No one has ever complained that the ones who are selling that quantity at the same price of 50 are being unfair.
Yes.
So it's just that now it's price and not quantity. We can see the difference very clearly. But think about it from a supermarket point of view. I don't need to make an extra margin on my bread, because you see, the bakers buy the wheat, they process it. So whatever price they're selling to the supermarket, they've already factored in their profit, and then the supermarket has to make its own profit on that bread. But now if I'm the supermarket and I'm the one baking the bread, we've sort of cut one layer of profits. So really that's why the supermarkets are able to do that. I don't consider it anti-competition. If anything, if they were to increase their prices, they would be making higher margins than the people who are actually competing with them. They would actually be benefiting way more at 55 shillings.
Yes.
Because their cost base, even if the wheat has increased, their production and processing has not really changed. So, and I don't know how the competition authority is going to weigh in on this, because I'm sure they will, in terms of protecting the consumer. But, from a layman perspective, you are trying to protect the consumer, then you're looking at giving us the lower prices. So again, that works against the bakers. But then something we do not want to end up in is whereby the wheat prices, the raw material prices, are controlled, because this is the same problem we are seeing in the maize flour.
Yes.
And it's not really helped regulate or stabilize the prices of maize flour that comes to your table and mine. So really, I think the government, the only institution that should comment on this should be the competition authority.
Yes.
If the supermarkets are not acting in any anti-competition behavior, then it's simply market forces, and market forces includes Russia taxing its exports. So that's market forces. So if the bakers feel they can't trade at 50, then let them move to 55. If supermarkets can trade at 50, let's see if supermarkets can meet our demand. If they can't, then we'll still end up with the bakers.
Yes.
Now this is where they get to test their brand value.
Yes, but Gabriel, the supermarkets are the ones who are calling for the bakers, independent bakers, to reduce their price to 50 shillings, because they're seeing a situation where it's as if it's a soft threat. If you don't reduce it, then you're not going to sell, because our bread is at 50 and customers are going to get it at 50 shillings.
Yes, but think about it. If I'm the supermarket and my bread clears first before yours clears, then I'm okay.
Yes.
So really, I think where the supermarkets are coming from is what I'm talking about, the anti-competition.
Yes.
Whereby, products of the same quality, same standard, etc., are sold at different prices. It's allowed in a number of commodities, but in such a core product as bread, the competition authority is more than likely to weigh in. So supermarkets would be playing it safe if they get the bakers to bring it down to 50. But I don't know, it's really a shocker why supermarkets did not jump to really push it to 55, because that just simply means more profits for them.
Yes.
So it's also, a play, there's a play somewhere we may not be seeing. And I think that will come out clear when the competition authority does weigh in.
Yes. All right, Ramogi, let me also put you in on this. Now, well, the bakeries, all right, the bakers themselves, they're calling on the government to also zero rate wheat flour into the country, because they're saying, well, I mean, the whole of this scenario is playing out because then you are not zero rating the wheat flour that we're getting from outside the country into the country to sort of plug in the deficit that we're experiencing in the country. Is that the conversation point, and how important is this? Because we've seen exactly how the government has been playing out in the price controls when it comes to maize flour. Should they also get their feet into the wheat flour?
Well, first of all, let me just, I heard Gabriel say that he doesn't know why the supermarkets did not push the prices up to 55. I think I have an idea. After the fall of Nakumatt and most recently Tuskys, and the coming into the market of the likes of Carrefour, I think the local supermarkets and generally supermarkets in Africa have realized that the African middle class is quite fluid. It's very thin. And so you do not come with high prices. If you go to Carrefour, I think one of their selling points is that we are the lowest in the market. The days when Nakumatt would come with high-end prices and still compete evenly are long gone. Supermarkets want lower prices because they want to move volumes. They have realized that if they are going to survive, they need to move volumes, and this is happening across board. It doesn't matter what the brand is, they want volumes and they want to sell fast. They are maintaining their prices at very low levels as much as they can. Yes. And so pushing the price of bread to 55 when they know that it can actually still be done at 50 was against their and it was not going to happen as the bakers thought. Now, moving on to the zero rating, forgive me, but on this one I'm going to be the devil's advocate. We are moving too much into the direction of subsidizing food prices. With zero rating, VAT, and I think as Gabriel has mentioned, we've seen a lot of this in the maize sector. I do not see, first of all, I don't think we all should eat a lot of bread. I think we should eat a lot of sweet potatoes and a lot of cassava and a lot of nduma. And so if the prices can go up and discourage Kenyans from eating more wheat products and less of the natural food that we have available, kudos. I do not think
Ramogi, despite the data that indicates that, well, this is a basic commodity.
Basic commodity is ugali. Everything else is a joke. Everything else is a joke. Basic commodity is ugali. Some of us can actually eat ugali in the morning, ugali at noontime, and ugali in the evening, and we'll still be okay. But I think the idea of zero rating really wheat so that the prices can remain low is not a good idea. Yes. In the first place, if you are a villager like me, some of these wheat products are luxury items. We should all eat cassava and nduma. I think they are very nice.
Pretty much. Gabriel, I want you to close in on this conversation. Do you share the same sentiment that the government should not move into zero rating wheat flour in the country? Because, number one, it's a basic commodity, whether we run away from it or not. And if you look at the production levels in the country, we will never be able to sort of plug in the deficit that we have in the country as it is of now. Which begs the question, if it's a basic commodity and it's bringing in wrangles here and there, shouldn't we just zero rate it so that Well, they can therefore control the price?
So yeah, I'll differ completely with my companion. His love for ugali may have clouded his judgment, but yeah, I'm fully for zero rating.
Yes.
Because you see, the idea of this VAT and the reason it's not actually on bread at 16% is because VAT is designed to allow the government regulate prices. Some of these taxes allow the government to respond to international and market forces.
Yes.
Now, what has happened to Russia is a market force issue. It's an external issue. So how does the government stabilize the market? By playing around with its VAT rate. They have increased, then you bring down VAT so that you can shield the current price from a big fluctuation,
Yes.
a big one-off fluctuation. So that's really why you have these taxes inbuilt there. So that's a move the government should go to do. As far as whether we want people to eat more wheat, I do not take wheat at all, but I do encourage freedom for people to choose what they want to eat anytime and any day. And I think wheat is a very basic product and a very basic commodity, as you mentioned, especially when it's processed into bread. So zero rating is going to actually stabilize the market, and maybe that's what the bakers were aiming for. I think that's maybe what they were aiming for.
Simba, I hope you'll give me the chance, the right to have reply now that I've been accused of being an adherent of ugali.
Well, Ramogi, let's go roll and clear that conversation with your response.
Thank you. Well, first of all, yes, at least we agree on the nature of choices that people ought to make. And the fact, I know that sounded like a joke, but in terms of health standards that we have,
yes.
Wheat products have pushed the American population into a lot of obesity cases. And so much as it sounded as a joke, I think we need to resort to more natural food items. But as you say, we are a liberal community. Let people choose what they want to eat. As regards zero rating, look, dude, we are just coming out of a pandemic, and the government is struggling to get ways and means of raising revenue. To resist zero rate an item that perhaps we need to then price more evenly would be unwise. And so on that one, I think I would maintain my stance that I don't think it's a great idea to zero rate it. The price stabilizing mechanisms that the government intervention will bring on board are secondary to market forces. Let's maintain market mechanism in this case and just see it even out so that then there is still a population that will still buy bread at 55. There's those who prefer to go to the supermarket every time to buy it at 50. And then at some point it will even out using competition as the right yardstick for price evening. Thank you, Simba.
Pretty much. All right, gentlemen, I beg that we move on to the second item that we have on the table this morning, where the latest data from the Central Bank of Kenya, CBK, indicates that pre-tax earnings in the period ended November 2020 in the banking industry dropped by 28.2% to 107.7 billion shillings from 150.1 billion shillings recorded in the industry a year earlier. It will be the lowest in 11 months in pre-tax profit in 8 years, indicating the massive disruption of the COVID-19 pandemic in the industry that has enjoyed a history of strong growth in earnings. Already, a flurry of banks have announced profit warnings for the year. That is Standard Chartered Bank of Kenya, ABSA Kenya, Cooperative Bank of Kenya, DTB, IM&M Holdings and NCBA, indicating they are looking at a 25% fall in full year net earnings. The data that attributes all the misfortunes for the industry to the COVID-19 pandemic continues to indicate that bank borrowers defaulted 73.05 billion shillings in 10 months to December, with the value of loans defaulted hitting 423 billion shillings, or a 14.1% of the total 3 trillion loan book in December, representing a sharp rise from 351.73 billion shillings that was in default by the end of March. Good. Just before we cross over, let's take a look at the overview of the banking industry in the country. That is Kenya's banking sector performance indicators, and that's where we're coming from. In an audited result, you can see where the profit before tax is, and that's what is the CBK is throwing to our attention this morning, that it is the lowest 11 months result in 8 years, and they're saying this is only just because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Let's go to the non-performing loans book in the economy. And just before we cross over the non-performing, let's look at the banking sector deposits, loans and advances. Well, in terms of total loans and advances, we've seen them continue to grow, and we do know why, because, well, we do know the cash reserve ratio was reduced as well, so the banks could actually continue lending into the economy as well, and that data from 2018 to 2019 will continue showing you that. And if you look at the gross non-performing loans trend, go back to 2020 and look at it. That's why it's coming on, because from now is where we have the 14.1% of the total loans book in the economy that the CBK is saying is in default. Fine. Gabriel, I know we've spoken about this. Good. But now, this is another report, again, by the Central Bank of Kenya, which I'm going to ask you again today, is the stability of the banking industry amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Gabriel, can you get me?
Oh, yes, sorry, I wasn't sure if it was me. Yeah, so I think, and I like the way you presented the numbers, looking at March instead of looking at, pre-2020 or before 2020.
Yes.
So one thing we need to note here is that there's the accounting aspect of it. Yeah?
Yes.
Remember, banks did not give up, did not surrender, did not waive interest on their loans. Yeah, that is not what they did. The banks did not waive interest on their loans. They only agreed to provide grace periods or moratoriums.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, most of those moratoriums are going all the way into 2021. So assuming someone was supposed to be paying interest in 2020, they are not paying in 2020, they are going to pay in 2021. Now, banks cannot record that as an income in their books. As much as they know their income will be paid, it's just been delayed.
Yes.
So rightfully so, their profit is going to decline. And I think banks are preparing, this is very strategic from them, from an accounting perspective.
Yes.
If you were to look at the financial projections of any bank in 2021, they are going to increase their profits significantly, because all the money you were to make in the last 6 to 9 months as interest, yeah? Assuming I had a loan that I was to pay and you've just delayed it by 6 months, it means all the money I was to pay now is going to be paid next year.
Yes,
so your profits are going to seem to reduce this year.
Yes.
But it's all going to come in next year.
Yes, but Gabriel, what stops us from saying that anyone who has gotten a moratorium right now would essentially not be able to pay in 2021? Are we just forecasting a problem?
Because and your question is spot on, Simba.
Yes.
Now, what banks I can assure you have done, we are talking about an increase of about 100 billion
Yes.
in non-performing loans.
Yes.
That should tell you they have already assessed from those that requested for moratoriums and grace periods who are actually really struggling. I told you, banks have taken this opportunity to actually clean up their books, because they can clean up their books without egg on their face. If I had a loan that we kept on restructuring, trying to talk to the customer, and now we see an opportunity here called COVID, we just declare this loan non-performing and say it's because of COVID and
Yes.
not because of our bad lending policy.
Yes.
So that's one thing they've done, because the increase we are seeing is very significant. And I want to believe that as much as businesses have been affected in Kenya, and some might not be able to meet their repayments, the decline in profits is not only because of that. The accounting treatment of these grace periods is significantly impacting that. And then next year, now you'll start seeing banks singing with, this year rather, 2021, by March, you'll see rosy results. It's just because the grace periods have really run out. So we need to, first of all, exclude the accounting perspective. But you're right, Simba. We don't know how many of these people who actually got grace periods
Yes.
are going to come back. But I want to believe banks have accounted for most of them in the non-performing loans, because if you start doing the same in 2021, you're going to look bad while your partners are actually thriving.
Pretty much. All right, Ramogi, I want you to come on in this and take us on a break this morning. Well, I mean, everything that we've heard from the Central Bank of Kenya governor and the Treasury is that, well, our banking industry is quite stable, that they have enough to sort of withstand the effects that we've seen of the COVID-19 pandemic. Share the same sentiment when we're reporting the worst 11 months in 8 years history, when we're reporting about a flurry of banks, even KCB giving us a profit warning for the first time in what has been 18 years. I mean, are they still that stable, or we have to wait again and see the expiry of these moratoriums before we come back and say, well, they've been stable?
Well, I agree with him that the banking sector in Kenya is stable.
Yes.
I also agree with I forget that the stability has been proven over and over with a lot of shocks in the past, the post-election violence, and it has maintained the course. So I don't think this has affected it in a bad way.
Yes.
I also agree with Gabriel on the accounting issues with the banks. It's very hard to report that moratorium or a delay in payment of the interest. And so you just post it as a default and hope that at least when 2021 comes, when you can make your shareholders happy and report sterling performance, and at the same time, of course, take advantage of the season to pronounce as defaults not loans that have been disturbing you as a banker. But there's something that I saw yesterday, Simba.
Yes.
I think 14 would be the magic number. You said that the defaults have risen by 14%.
Yes.
But I also saw that the number of people that have been taken to CRB have now hit 14 million. 14 million grown-up adults have borrowed and have either refused or have been unable to pay.
Yes.
And someone was even joking that they could actually elect a president, because 14 million Kenyans is a very large number. I hear they are even thinking of registering a party, United Defaulters Movement. Funny as it is, that should tell you just where we are as an economy.
Yes.
Yes, the banking industry is strong, but it is a barometer of where the economy is in terms of performance.
Yes.
Long before COVID, these guys were already auctioning people right and left. There were too many auction reports in the newspapers. The economy was already performing poorly before COVID-19. There were already defaults before COVID-19, and I'm glad you've mentioned that there was already 350 billion unaccounted for or not non-performing loans within the banks. And so while we want to blame COVID for all the faults there are, I don't think it's just COVID. I think the economy is not doing well, and we need to face that reality.
Pretty much, Gabriel, once we come back, let's talk about where this performance is pegged on in 2021, Gabriel. Even before we said, well, they're being quite stable. Look at where most experts put the economy to perform this year. Well, they're saying the 6.2 that we've seen from Treasury, too optimistic. They're putting in at 4-point-something%. Wow. If we're only going to rebound by 5 or 4-point-something, it means that, well, the other central sectors of the economy in which most of these banks have lent to, let's talk about manufacturing, let's talk about the tourism and hospitality sector. Those ones, the ones that are still reeling from the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. If indeed, Gabriel, they're not going to rebound to that level, then shouldn't we say, let's wait for the end of 2021 before we start saying, well, that the banking industry has been stable, because we do expect that they are still not going to make money out of the one that they're not paying right now, once we come back here on Business on Metropole Television.